Hello, everyone. I'm Hugh Kretschmer, chair of the Los Angeles chapter of APA. I want to welcome you to our webinar, Know Your Business, Why Do I Need a Casting Director? It is hosted by Tish Campbell and Amber Havens from Storyboard Casting. Thank you, ladies, for coming on and sharing your expertise. Programming like this enables us to give back to our members and the photo industry. With your support through membership, we can support you through advocacy, community, and connection. In other words, you help us help you. Thank you to my fellow board members and our director, Patty Silverstein, who is the glue that keeps this chapter together. A very special thank you to Sammy's Camera, our most ardent supporter for many years. We couldn't do it without them. So without further ado, please let me hand it over to Patty. So take it away, Patty.
Thank you, Hugh. Welcome, everyone, and welcome Tish and Amber from Storyboard Casting. Thank you so much again for being here today. Storyboard Casting, these two work mostly on non-union productions. And let me just take a brief moment and read their bio so you know who is with us today. Tish Campbell. Tish has had a long career at the intersection of business and the creative sector. In addition to casting, which she started doing in 2009, her professional experience includes jewelry designer, business owner, and developer of programs at cultural and higher education institutions, such as the Art Access Program at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta and Art Savvy, a public program at the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco. Thank you. Additionally, Tish led the Department of Institutional Advancement at Savannah College of Art and Design, where she developed the Georgia Creative Careers Pipeline program. In her role at SCAD, she helped raise funds for student scholarships, museum exhibitions, event sponsorships for the university's annual film, television, and garnering festivals, and supported community engagement efforts across 4 campuses for academic departments in over 40 creative disciplines. She remains deeply committed to the creative community and to education. Tish currently splits her time between Austin, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome, Tish.
Thank you.
Amber Havens. Amber has been in and around the entertainment business her whole life, starting in children's theater at a very young age. She moved to LA at 18 to attend a prestigious acting conservatory and start her professional journey, leaning on advice she got at an early age to do and learn everything possible about all sides of the business. She has spent the last 30 years collecting knowledge and experience in multiple facets of the entertainment industry. She eventually settled on the production side of things, and her extensive casting experience now runs the gamut of film and television extras, principals, and commercial print and video. Amber prides herself on creating strong relationships with people and loves being a connector between clients and great talent. Amber lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, but spends a lot of time in Tahoe and her hometown of Reno, Nevada. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So before we get started, please hold all your questions till the end. We will have time for a Q&A, but Tish and Amber have a presentation ready to go. And so what do casting directors do, and what are some of the reasons why you might need them?
Well, first off, I want to say just how grateful we are to be here hosting this webinar. So thank you so much for having us. I think if we're being honest, many of us don't really fully understand what goes into each other's roles. And we find so often that there are a lot of misconceptions about what the casting process entails and the value it might bring to your production. So discussions like this are super beneficial to the whole process. So thank you again. So what we do overall, basically, we consider ourselves translators. Our job is to interpret the creative vibe that's given to us through talent specs and creative decks, and then turn that into real life talent options. We act as a talent filtration system and a link between the producer, photographer, videographer, and then the talent and agents throughout the entire casting process. So this starts with establishing rates and fine-tuning usage, to gathering availability and casting media to present, and then all the way to final bookings and dealing with model releases. So in a nutshell, that's basically what we do.
I'll take the why you might need a casting director part of the question. To be fair, sometimes you really don't. Depending on the project, it might be easiest and even most cost effective for you or maybe your production assistant just to reach out to agencies yourselves and get links to talent packages. For instance, if you can cast from talent cards alone, typically meaning you're using pro models, that would be an instance where it might be the easiest for you to just reach out yourself. I would give an example of a beauty brand. Maybe you're shooting a lipstick, it's a close-up series of shots. You really are looking for a couple of different models with different skin tones. Lots of options you can grab from an agent there and send them all to your client. There's really not a whole lot that needs to go into that. Outside of that straightforward example, if you are planning on doing it yourself, consider a few things. Packages have a lot of talent choices in them, and agents are notorious for coloring outside of the lines when it comes to specs. They're going to throw in a lot of different things just to see. So are you sending the link as is to your client to choose from? It's a question you need to ask yourself. Also important to note, agents typically put talent options they send to you who have not been pre-screened for their interest in your project or for their availability. So ask yourself, are you running the risk that a client will fall in love with the talent they see in a package who might not be either interested or available? You can make that clear to them at the very beginning, but again, your time and the back and forth. And then if you need things like a self-tape or the client requests specific casting photos, how are you going to manage gathering, compiling, and presenting all of that media, all of the varying availability, especially say if it's a shoot that's more than one day and a talent is available one day but not the next? How are you going to do that so it's easy to keep track of and decipher for yourself, but also for your client? And again, is it worth your time? So the reasons why you might want to consider a casting director. If you have multiple roles to cast, if you are using unrepresented people or what people call real people who don't necessarily have a portfolio, but maybe they do. And if they do, are all the photos included in that pre-existing portfolio professional enough and appropriate enough that you could send that link to your client as is? Question to ask yourself. Also, hire us if the client wants talent with particular skills or life experiences, so you have to ask extra questions. And then going back to the topic of talent being pre-screened for their interest and their availability, you might want to use a casting director if you don't want to coordinate all that yourself. And then of course, there's the visual presentation. As photographers, you all know that the visual work you put out there in the world represents your brand and shapes how your audience perceives you. And then what they see can make or break a first impression. So do you want the way that you deliver talent options to be anything less than what you do normally? A casting director can take care of delivering talent in one singular, professional looking, very visually cohesive presentation. That presentation is going to include headshots, current digitals that verify the talent's look in the moment, any specialty casting photos, self-tapes if you need those, and then all of their available dates. And then any other data that your client might want to see in a presentation. A casting director worth their salt, delivers all of that to you in one place. And then I would say that just because we all see this nowadays, we're seeing clients are squeezing budgets tighter and tighter. And photographers and producers are feeling forced to take casting on themselves to save the client money. Before you decide to do that and have a go at that route, go ahead and check in with us. When you're bidding, depending on the number of talent you have to cast and the project parameters and the talent budget that they're giving you, you will see that the talent budget a lot of times is a very large cost of the overall bid that you are putting out there, right? We have had experiences where producers showed us budgets for talent where the projected talent rates were higher than they needed to be. One shoot I recall, we were able to help refine the entire talent budget. So what happened was they were able to fit in both an acceptable talent rate because they had estimated too high, and then they were able to fit in casting direction as well because they came to us early. So come to us early, and if that happens, everyone's happy.
Yes, come to you early. Can you actually walk us through the bidding process?
Sure. So our clients typically reach out to us either while they're bidding the project or after they have already been awarded the job. So regardless of where you are in the process, we always want to say that it's important to provide as much clarity as you can about the full scope of the project. This will help us estimate the time that it might take to present the finished product to you. So all details are really necessary when you're bringing it to us.
Yeah, again, it's just an important note about reaching out in your bidding process. We want to be a resource for you. We regularly connect with agents across the United States, and we have a really long history of working with real people talent. So we can help you with the language to manage your client expectations when it comes to putting a price to what we call a holy trinity, which is usage, term, and rate. That holy trinity correlates with the talent's willingness to submit for an opportunity as well. So again, use us when you're putting together your bid. If you need us to sign NDAs, we'll sign NDAs. We're happy to do it. If you win the job and then you decide to hire us, then it will all go smoother from that point on.
How do you estimate the costs for your services?
Well, I wish there was, but there's no one size fits all formula for estimating that cost. We consider a handful of factors when we're thinking about that, such as the number of talent needed. This directly affects the formula there. The holy trinity, which Tish was talking about, the usage, the terms, and the rate of the talent. And then how general or tight the specs are. We'll get into that a little bit later, but that can really affect the price of the bid. So all these combined determine how long it would take to source competitive options for you. So once we have all the details, we're able to put together a casting estimate that includes what you see here in this slide. So it will include our general casting services, that's gathering headshots, current photos, and any specialty casting photos that you might need for your specific project. We also always collect self-tapes from our talent, and these are sourced, interested, and available talent. And then finally, we present you with one singular link of talent options for client review. If the client wants an in-person casting or a virtual casting, that will be added as a separate charge based on the casting type and number of talent. We really only get this request for virtual live castings about 2% of the time, especially since we offer to gather self-tapes from talent. That kind of takes care of the visual. But a lot of times people want callbacks, so we're open to doing that. We also typically include the talent rates for you in our bid. These rates are just for reference because we don't take care of paying the talent. We leave that up to production, and that is handled separately, but we do include those for reference for your costs. And then the final amount is based on the scope of the project and an estimate of how long we think we will be able to spend on it.
And Can we talk a bit more about talent usage and how we need to put in time on that just as much as our own photographers' usage and how it affects project budget?
Yeah, so talent usage is so important, and we can't stress that enough, because we need to communicate talent usage to agents and or the talent directly. It's really important to be as dialed in as possible with the usage language. This will also directly affect talent rates as well as the talent options that are presented for consideration. So even if we're casting unrepped or real people talent, they need to be just as dialed in because they're handling their own contracts. So it's just as important no matter what kind of talent we're casting. So overall, talent and agents lean on us to convey a clear and concise usage so that there are no surprises along the way, and also no risk of liability problems later on. So when we get general usage statements, we always come back and ask for more detail on where the assets are going to be placed in the world. If you see this slide, this is a real life example of a general usage statement that was given to us at the time of the bid versus what came back after we went to the agency and pushed them to dig in a little bit further. So you can see it's quite different from what it started out and what it ended up being. So it's just very important to be super clear.
Yeah, I want to mention, just visually looking at this, that this was a big job with a big tech company who had very big lawyers. And these ads were placed worldwide. And I recognize that this looks scary. It's not going to happen all the time. The real takeaway here is to ask the client to be specific. It's also a great example of how a casting director adds value by being the go-between. Casting directors deal with multiple varieties of usage clauses every day, and we're constantly taking the pulse on rates and usage fees. So it's smart of you to lean on us to help you discuss defining and refining the usage, not only to suit the client's budget, but also to suit the talent and the talent agent's rate expectations. Getting it right is going to help your client get the best talent, or at least help them understand what they can get for what they're willing to spend. There's also a lot to be said about how casting directors can circumvent future legal issues around usage, as Amber just mentioned. You know, I can't speak for other casting directors and other casting agencies, but we review all model releases. We don't have to, but we do it because we like to be thorough and we want to advocate for the talent, even though we don't represent any of the talent that we find for you. We're just presenting them. The usage is going to be in the release form the model signed, so we want to help catch problems before they actually become problems. If your talent signs model releases either like right before the shoot day or they're signing them on set, do you want it to come to that point and risk that they won't sign it, which then leaves you having to go back to your client after the shoot? We see so many agencies and clients that have standard boilerplate releases that they send over, and they never work 100% of the time. We come back with edits, and we're never going to send it through to the agents or any of our unrepresented talent for that matter if it doesn't align with the usage that was signed off on. So again, main point is catching usage nuances early will help everyone with efficiency and avoidance of potential future liability issues.
Let's talk about buyouts. So many clients are looking for the unlimited time and use. So where does that fit in?
Yes, please. Let's talk about buyouts. Of course, we're just talking about talent usage for non-union productions here. There are built-in rules and guidelines with union jobs that we're not going to tackle. And where we see these requests coming in most of the time is in non-union contracts. And again, you just said it, Patty, another important point is that your usage as a photographer is most likely not the same as the talent usage. I will say that buyouts or unlimited time and use, otherwise known as, those requests have to go.
Yeah.
You know, much like clients are coming to you all as photographers and wanting more and more work for hire arrangements, in the same exact vein, they're habitually asking for buyouts with the talent. And the agents and the talent themselves are not having it. They are pushing back. It doesn't mean you can't get it, but I'm going to warn you, it is not cheap. We have example upon example of brands and projects where the topic of talent usage buyouts slip through being discussed at the pre-stages when you're in negotiation. And then once casting starts, they find out that they don't have the budget for the reality of that. And then for what they do have budget-wise, they can't get the talent that they expected to get, right? So it's a bigger conversation, but really the time to dig into negotiating talent, not just the photographer's usage, talent usage, not just the photographer's usage, is at the very beginning stages. So again, emphasizing, feel free to bring us in early, even if you're still bidding, we can help you with language and a strategy to get ahead of this. If you find yourself in that position, the big question or a number of questions we suggest addressing are, first of all, are they seeing if they can get away with it? Is it an easy button? Is it too much work to keep track of usage for them and then have to go back in and scrub the images from whatever digital repository they're in? And then if it's a product like a car or a mobile device, will those images really, really be relevant in 2 to 3 years anyway? It's a very fair question. And more often than not, these are the reasons that they're asking for unlimited time and use. We find that about 98% of the time, maybe a little less, we might be exaggerating a little bit depending on the project, the client will agree to a shorter usage term by using one very simple phrase, and that at the end of the usage, and that phrase is perpetuity for archival purposes only. Add that to the end of the usage clause. Agents and talent understand that there's no company that wants to go back in and scrub. They don't want to scrub anything. It's a time suck and it costs because they have to pay their employees to do that. So I'm going to show you, so you have it visually, all you visual people, what that looks like. First example is a local healthcare provider, very, very small company, local company. They requested unlimited time and use. They wanted it in perpetuity. They didn't really need it. So by drilling that down, they were like, yeah, we only really need these for 3 years. And here's exactly where we're going to put it. We don't need it. We don't need all of those other media outlets. This is the only place we're going to use it. Really brought the budget down for them, made it doable. Second example here is a much larger company, a tech company, clearly. And then here you see what we are able to drill down to for them. So most important, the perpetuity for archival purposes only solution is going to make your clients happy a lot of the time, because it's really just a reframing of language and it gets them most likely to where they were shooting to be in the first place. And it really hits home when the cost comes to light.
You also mentioned broad specs versus tight specs affecting the budget. Can you give us an example of that?
Right. So a lot of times photographers will summarize the specs when they're sent to us, but just as with usage, the more dialed in and specific the talent specs are, the more streamlined the process will be for everybody involved. So we try to encourage our clients to share all the details and notes around talent specs with us, not just a summary. So we recently worked on a project that was presented, and in the initial bid, it was 21 talent, very broad specs. They cast a wide net. It was all ages, all ethnicities, no specific physical attributes. Nobody needed to have special skills. So we bid the project. It was awarded. We started working on it. And then halfway through the process, everything just started to really change drastically. The client came back with completely different specs. They wanted professional healthcare workers or talent, real talent who had professional healthcare worker experience. They also wanted people who had worked in a factory or on an assembly line. And then they wanted a 30-something male with a physical disability, specifically looking for a cochlear implant or a talent in a wheelchair. And then on top of that, this talent needed to be comfortable portraying a same-sex couple. And then they added a real 3-generation family. So that's child, parent, and grandparent. So we're okay with these changes. We understand that specs change and we get that. And a lot of times it is kind of out of your control. It's up to the client. It comes directly from the client. But we want to really kind of be open and honest about what the reality is around that. If the specs get extremely tight, the time it takes to find these specialty talent changes, and the cost also changes because of the time we're investing into it. So again, these specs are attainable, but this is a real life example of how it can drastically change the entire scope of the project for us, how much time it takes, and the additional cost for the casting. So because this specific client's budget didn't fit the added cost of research that was going to be needed on top of the 21 talent, they ended up bringing down the talent number to just those 6 specialty talent, which ended up keeping the casting fees about the same. So that's a great example of general versus tight specs and how it might affect your casting fees.
Once again, bring you on early.
Yeah, right. It's, if, like I said, we understand that it might change halfway through, but if we have the conversation early enough, we might be able to pick up on certain questions that maybe weren't asked, or bring up certain problems that may incur and save a ton of time and even probably money at the end of the day. It's
knowing those right questions to ask, to get them to think about, really, what are they?
Yeah. We'll try to help set you up for success with your creative call if you call us early.
Yeah, we love it.
So can you walk us through what the casting entails?
Yeah. So like we mentioned earlier, in order for us to properly translate the overall feel and the vision and the vibe of the project, it's always best if we can see the creative deck in full. Sometimes we'll just receive the talent section of the deck, like this example, which is super helpful in understanding the feel of the talent need. And then other times we do have a few producers and photographers who will send us the whole creative deck, including shot lists, location and wardrobe, any color schemes that may be, included. And this really allows us to see the overall creative direction and vibe of the shoot. Even though it doesn't really matter to us where the locations are and what the wardrobe is a lot of the time, they're just little pieces of the puzzle that translate to us the overall feel and what we want to deliver to you in the end. So once we have a really good idea of the types of talent we're looking for, we can source them in a lot of different ways depending on the scope of the project. So one way obviously is to reach out to agencies and request talent packages. We also, depending on the project, create casting calls and we post them on our social media boards. We can post on casting boards like Backstage, Casting Networks. And then we also have an internal talent contact list that we've built over the years of talent that we know and trust, and we know we'll do a really great job. So if specs happen to fit any of them, we'll reach out to them specifically. And then, like I was talking about before, if there are any specialty talent that we need to do research for, we can research places where we might find those people, do cold calls, emailing. And then at the end of the day, if we really need more people that we can't find with these resources, we can do a street casting depending on the project.
Yeah, and we can literally get hundreds of options once we start getting all of the responses start coming in from these various places that are on the screen now. I'll show you an example of our process, a visual example. So here is a casting funnel. This would be an example of a casting for 6 roles. We're just going to call it 6 roles. Broad specs. You'd have lots of options. And so there would be tons of people who would self-identify and be able to self-identify and submit themselves to this. So let's say from all of those different places that we do outreach to, we get 500 people diving into this funnel. We need to cull that down a lot. We'll cull it down, we'll say, see you later, to at least half of them. In this example, we bring it down to 250 people. We are looking at every single person that submits. We're looking at all the options. Anyone we're interested in, we are going to send them a link to round 2 of the casting. And this link directs them to upload their digitals, self-tapes, provide their availability, and then get any other data that we need from them. And that pulls in everybody into a bucket that is visually cohesive, and what eventually becomes the presentation that we will send you to share with your client. I want to mention, though, going back to people who are interested in your project, like you don't know that they might be interested in your project. Say we're pulling in some people from an agency and the agent just sent them to us. We invite them. They might not be interested in your project. So they will not select to move themselves forward for one reason or another. And that helps us filter down our numbers even more. So from there, we review all of those. We review their headshots. We look at all of their specialty photos. Sometimes we will pull those photos down and crop them and put them back in so that they look better, and they look better in the final presentation. I lighten things sometimes if it's dark. We watch their self-tapes all the way through to make sure that they're spot on. We make sure that their availability aligns with what the needs are, et cetera, and then we make more decisions. In the end, for a job here with 6 people, we would typically present 60 people. That would be 10 people per role. But I would say, though, if it has broad specs, we might present 12 people, just because there will be more people who are competitive. When you get tighter specs, there are going to be fewer people. If you're looking for people who can unicycle or stand up paddleboard, it brings the number of people down substantially. I do want to go back to saying we watch the videos all the way through for a really, really good reason. You do not want to skip to the end because you like the talent in the first 15 seconds and you're like, yeah, you're in, great, good. You don't want to have to, you don't want to save time there. You want to spend the entire time. We have an example of somebody, if we had not watched the video all the way through, it would have been incredibly embarrassing. And I'm going to let Amber talk about this because it was her project.
Perfect.
You're welcome.
Absolutely mortified. I think I just want to, yeah, this is so embarrassing. Anyway, so we were doing this project. We were going through all of the videos that takes so much time. We try to keep them to a 1 minute, 1 minute max, but a lot of talent ramble and go more. So we look through all of them. And this one gentleman, the question was, tell us about a really cool date you've had recently or a double date that you've been on. And he was very eloquent. He looked great on camera. He was moving well. And the temptation was to be like, nah, he's in. Let's push him through. But of course, we listen through the entire thing. So he gets going about his time with his date and his friend's date. It's a double date, and they're on this booze cruise and they're having a great time. And just at the very end of the video, he says, "We got off the boat, and then I took my date into the bathroom, and they did adult things, and then they came out of the bathroom, and that was the end of the date." And he went into detail about what happened in the bathroom. And my jaw just like dropped on the floor. I'm like, if we hadn't have watched this video and sent this through to our client or to our photographer, nobody would have looked good. And it turns out that his agent didn't watch his self-tape either. So it's just a warning. If you're doing it on your own, you never really know what's going to come through in those videos. Agents are busy. They're doing a ton of things. So watching all of their talents' videos is something sometimes they don't get to. So we, again, are a filtration system, and we will stop any inappropriate messages coming through. So anyway, funny thing is we went back to his agent, had him redo the self-tape, and he ended up booking the job. So we as casting directors really do what we can to keep whoever we are presenting to you, our client, keep them competitive as possible by making sure that their self-tapes are up to par, their photos are up to par. So all of that takes a lot of time. So
Because it's your reputation.
yeah, it's
They don't know us. It's
Yeah.
your reputation.
Yeah. So once we do filter down all of the best options, we send them in a shareable link, one link that we've talked about through this entire webinar, one link that's really easy to share with your client. So this presentation example was for a food company. So we gathered headshots, current digitals, photos of their hands, since much of the shot list included close-ups on cooking. And in addition, we asked the talent to submit a self-tape that demonstrated their cooking skills and then discussing what they like to cook. This casting presentation is interactive, so clients can click on any photo from the gallery to open the talent card where they'll see all the submitted material that we've collected for you, their self-tape, their selfies, their headshot, their availability, any additional questions that you have asked us to ask. It's all right there. If you click on each photo, it enlarges it. You can scroll through the gallery that way. You can also download the image if you want to pop it into your own creative deck next to other talent to mix and match and see who fits well together. So once the client reviews these options, they'll either provide us feedback if they want to see additional options for a role, or they'll make the final decisions at that time. And then once the final selects are made, we go ahead and confirm the talent and then send the production team their contact info and sizes. And then from there, we open it up for the production team to contact talent directly for the additional project information, payment details, and things like that.
I also want to add to that the baseball cards that you're looking at here, we call them baseball cards, can include anything that you specifically need for your casting. It's customizable. So if you need to see if they are, what their union status is, we can put that there. If you need their height and their weight, we can put that there. If your client needs a particular shoe size, then that's important to your casting, we can put that in the upper level. There's lots of information behind this that we have, so we can feed it all into the presentation to suit you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so also, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just saying that's kind of what that's in the whole, like what we present and what we do.
Yeah. I do want to mention that we have a resource page on our website too. There's lots of links in it. Here, I will show you what's in there. We do a lot of work in California. We work in Baltimore. We work in Atlanta. We work all over the place, Colorado. There tends to be a lot of detailed information you need for California because California is a very labor rule intensive state. So there are links to California labor codes, but there are also, if you're estimating payroll, there's a link to a payroll estimator that allows you to plug in any state and get the employer expenses. So you can put those into your budget when you're doing your budget, if you're responsible for paying the talent as a producer or as a photographer, if that's in your budget and not going directly to the client. We have a link to children in film. If you've got kids on set, they are great. They will allow you to put in the state, and then it feeds in all of the information, all of the laws in those states that you can reference, and then a bunch of other things. And then if you have anything that you use regularly and you think would be great for us to include as this repository, as this resource, please send it to us. I would love to put anything on here that is helpful to us all as a whole.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think we're just really passionate about creating a community that sets everybody up for success, because that's why we're all here. So continuing the conversations, we're here. If you have any questions, like we've said 100 times, we're a resource, and we just would love to connect and get the information out there as much as we can.
Here's our info.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing that you have all these resources on the website available to people coming to your website. So everyone visit the website.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. What a wealth of information that you just shared to everyone. And we are so appreciative of your time and of the information that you shared. And just some takeaways. Hiring casting not only helps streamline the talent sourcing process, you made it very obvious how much goes into each part of this. And again, to call you in early, so you're right there with all the questions that should be asked up front. Visual presentation and level of detail included in the one singular talent link that you have time to put together, where sometimes photographers are not having time for. You have the knowledge, you're a knowledgeable, well-experienced casting company with great eyes and catches when you watch the videos, the self-tapes all the way through. And just once again, to tap into the casting directors early on. So please reach out to the casting directors.
Yeah.
Here, Tish Campbell, Amber Havens. Did I miss anything else here in my wrap up?
Oh, sounds great. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So welcome, and effort.
We really take pride in presenting really competitive and great images and packages to clients. And the easier, we want to make it as streamlined as possible so that it's easy on everybody. You know, it's less time consuming for everyone involved. So
we also, another thing that we do is when we send you the casting link to the presentation we showed you, we actually record, we use Loom to record a specialty walkthrough. It's like 2 minutes to just say, this is your casting. Here's what we have gathered for you. Here is how to move through it. Here is how to download images. It's just a quick kind of extra thing that we do that you can send to your clients so that when they open up the link, they know how to use it effectively and quickly and easily.
Oh, here's a question. Do you conduct the virtual live castings?
yes, we do. We schedule talent we schedule talent for the castings, whether your client wants to be in on the call or whether it's you, whoever wants to be in there can be in there. And then we navigate through that and present it to you in live time. We love to do live castings. You know, when Tish and I, obviously all of us used to do live castings and be involved in all this live stuff going on in the world. And obviously that's kind of gone by the wayside, but there's something really special about having a conversation with the talent and really kind of getting to know their personality. The self-tapes are great for that we collect, but as an added bonus to kind of dig a little deeper, we do find our clients are always really happy when we do the callbacks, the virtual callbacks.
And of course, we're usually doing those when there's a video component to a project.
Yeah, yeah. But we're happy to do them anytime. It would be nice to get back into live castings again.
Well,
A whole nother battle, but
that other time for us, right?
yeah. But we also find that with virtual live callbacks, we get a lot more talent who are interested in attending because they don't have to drive, they don't have to find parking, they don't have to take time off of work for the whole day, you know, it's not this whole thing. So virtual callbacks or castings are really, really something that are beneficial as well. So
One thing we didn't talk about a lot is real people or unrepresented talent. And I think it's worth talking about that a little bit. We talked a lot about like getting packages from agents and things like that, and didn't really drill into real people casting. Amber's had a lot of experience in different realms of casting, but we both met each other working on real people with real people talent.
Yeah.
We've done it for years. We are experts in that. And real people is kind of a weird term because it doesn't mean necessarily that these people don't have any experience on set. It just means that they're not represented by somebody. So you're not going to call a talent agent and find them. You're going to have to find different ways to get these folks. And then if you're really digging in and you are doing heavy skills-based casting, like you need people who have a certain level of being able to ski, or you need them to have a specific story in their background. Like Amber was talking about, we needed people who had real production line or assembly line experience. That's where you're going to need to find real people. And I think that is an area that you do need to reach out to a casting director. It takes a substantial amount of time. And if you have been doing it for a long time and you have a lot of talent already in your network, that helps substantially. We can actually reach out to our talent to ask them if they know anybody, if there's anybody in their family, if they have these particular skills, or whatever it might be. So just thought
I
I'd
also
say.
want to add one little note about real people is that a lot of times the perception is that you can hire real people for less money and get away with a broader usage. Again, with the usage, we're really trying to dial in that usage even with real people. And you know, with unrepresented talent, you may be able to get them for cheaper, get them for a cheaper talent rate. But if they are real people who have little to no experience on set, it's important to remember that that may pose certain problems the day of shooting. They don't know, they're not familiar with being on set. They're not familiar with being in front of a camera. So it may take a little extra zhuzhing or direction on set to be a little bit more hands-on with real people too. I'm seeing a question here. When live casting, can the client and or photographer watch the casting session in real time? Yes, we invite everybody who wants to attend, come in and we'll just obviously send you a link such as this. And you sit back and watch it. You can ask questions. You can be as involved in the casting or as uninvolved in the casting as you'd like. We had a client one time who just wanted us to schedule the talent, and then they wanted to handle the questions they were asking and the actions they were asking for the talent to do. And then we've also had clients who say, you know, you do it. We're just going to sit back and watch. We record every single live casting so that you have it to go back through for reference as well.
There's another question there too. Do you generate and or negotiate the talent release?
Well, we don't generate the release. That mainly will always come from the photographer or the producer. and they will probably get that from their client. Those are handed down to us. And then, like we discussed previously, once we get those releases, we go through it with a fine-toothed comb and make sure that the language matches, the language in the release matches the language that has been agreed upon for the project as far as the usage goes. For instance, I see this a lot. 9 times out of 10, this is, we're doing a stills only shoot, and then we get a release that has language pertaining to video and voice. Now, yes, there may not be video and or voice captured on set because it is a stills only shoot, but we can't have that language in there regardless, because if by something were to happen and there was that captured, then you're able to use that, and that wasn't part of the original usage. So we always, as far as negotiating the talent releases, yes, we go through and we make sure that it matches.
Yeah, we are not attorneys, and so we can't provide anything but, just our best advice and our eyes on these documents, just to help everybody involved, so that we're trying to keep ahead as a cohesive production team of any potential issues in the future. And I'll also mention, because somebody asked this to me previously, do you have standard boilerplate model releases? And there aren't any. It depends on your project, your needs, and all of that.
You had mentioned before with the usage, that it happens for photographers for sure, where they put everything there. They want to see if they can you said, if they want to see if they can get away with it. And then it takes someone to push back. Do you find when you do push back that they come down on their expectations easy, or do you find for the most part it really is the back and forth negotiation?
Are you talking about
For the usage, when
defining the usage at the very beginning, or the usage we see in the model release?
No, when you're just discussing the usage in
Very beginning.
yes.
We are helping our clients, the photographers, the producers, with a strategy and with language and with how to negotiate that. We don't negotiate it with your client directly. That's not our role. Our role is to help you to do that. But we see when cost comes to light, when we say, okay, you want unlimited time and use, big tech company, that's 30 grand. And they're like, what? Yeah. We have fill in the blank, much less than that.
Yeah.
For the talent. And you've got how many talent? Like that really, it's just a slap. It's a reality slap.
Yeah.
And then they're getting educated. So they have to backtrack, right? As they're getting educated on what this really entails.
Yeah. And the more that when you are in that creative call and you're talking about talent and you're addressing it in that moment and you're looking at the specs, the more you get ahead of it and the more you push back early on usage, and do it, of course, in a lovely way. Like, do you really need unlimited time and use? I'm shooting a car accessory for you, and the car is going to change models next year, and the accessory is not going to fit the cup holder or whatever it is that they're shooting. Like, do you really need that? Here's why I'm saying, let's back it up. Let's back it up to 2 years. Let's back it up to 3 years, whatever. It's going to be cheaper. And, we'll help you with that language.
Thank you, attendees, for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.